I'm more than welcome to speak of everything. I was just making a joke with my guests. I have this. This is a timer I have. It's old. The old is like 30-something years old. And every time I start it, it doesn't start. But this time, for the first, it started instantly.
So.
Which means Dr. Arrindell is great.
Good day, Earl, and good day to your viewers. You see, magic in the air.
Yeah. So you brought that magic.
Brought the magic to the clock.
Something's good with you.
I am fine. I'm recuperating from Caribbean Studies Association conference.
You were president of that organization, right?
I was until about June 7th, officially.
So what happened? You only served for 1 year?
1 year. The way the organization is structured is that you come on the executive committee for a few years, and then eventually you are qualified to run for the vice president post. And then if you're elected into the vice president post, you have a year that you serve behind the president, and then you transition into the presidency, and then the year after you become the immediate past president. So you kind of like have a couple of years working with the executive committee. But yeah, 1 year in the seat.
So looking back at that 1 year, what do you think was your biggest achievement?
We set out to do two things. We wanted to make the St. Maarten conference the best one ever, and I think we achieved that. But also we wanted to grow the membership, and we have increased numbers from 2024, and remember 2023 was the first year we're starting back in person after COVID. So my objective was like, how can we get 500 people on the ground in St. Maarten? And that would have been like a big number, because we had 296 in St. Lucia that attended the conference throughout the week. And we managed that.
In St. Maarten,
we got a 400 plus,
400
plus, almost 500.
That's good.
That's not bad. Good. That's not bad. People are happy with the increase.
You know, it's amazing how this island has transformed itself, especially in literature. And there were local people writing books.
Yes.
I remember when my good friend Lasana Seiko first did his poetry on this show some 40 years ago. People got really upset and angry. Look at it today.
Really?
House of Nehesi was what, 45?
45 years, House of Nehesi.
And you see what's happening on the island with more and more people coming out publishing their books.
Listen, and that was really, I'm glad that you raised that point, because every year the St. Maarten Book Fair takes place the first week of June.
Right.
And every year the Caribbean Studies Association takes place the first week of June. So the first thing I decided once we chose the location, which was obviously St. Maarten for me, we decided to sit down with a book fair committee and say, okay, how can we merge the two this year and give the CSA members a unique experience, conference experience, but also give the book fair participants a unique experience. So combining that, you had 22 years of book fair, so the organization is 22 years old, 45 years of House of Nehesi, and Caribbean Studies was 51 years old. So our 49th conference was in St. Maarten, and it was a collaboration with the St. Maarten Book Fair. And both sides, the book fair people, the CSA people, they were so excited, because in some activities we merged, everybody was together. So you're meeting the people that you study, you're meeting the people that you talk about. Some of them are your colleagues, some of them are people that you hadn't seen in decades, and we were all in St. Maarten together, you know, stomping together, writing together, sharing together. It was awesome. It was awesome.
So how they felt about St. Maarten?
Listen, I have not yet heard one person say that they had a bad experience. If they did, they kept it to themselves. Many are already booking to come back. Some were even saying, like, why didn't we get a tour through this? Because they went off and did their own tours. And so what we did, because you're at the hotel, the venue, the entire week, and you're having presentations all day. So from 9 to 5 every day, there was 9 to 3:30, there were simultaneous sessions taking place, 8 different sessions in 8 different rooms at Simpson Bay Resort. And then at 3:30 every day, we had the plenaries where everybody could come together and hear the topic, that main topic for the day. But in between that, those people who were not presenting at that time, they were off doing their things. They were on tour. Some went to Anguilla for the day. Some were asking about St. Bart. Some were saying, well, we discovered this. How come we didn't know about this? You know, it was just awesome. It was awesome.
They discovered the best island in the Caribbean.
That's what I told them when I did my opening. You know, I said the best island. And they were like, I said, we'll talk at the end of the conference.
No, I've been to many Caribbean islands, and nothing right now can compare to St. Martin.
St. Martin has a unique blend of things that you find like in everywhere, but that's always been our history, right? We are a combination of the best and sometimes the worst of some things, right? But our unique blend was the thing that they kept talking about because, you know, I have been to a lot of Caribbean islands like you, and I think they're all beautiful.
Yeah.
Every last one of them. There are things that you love, and then there are things that, well, St. Martin has that. But what I must say to Orel, 3 different people, totally independent of each other, said to me, the minute they land here, they could feel colonialism. Yeah. That was like, okay.
It doesn't hide its face, right?
It doesn't hide its face. And the fact that they said that, you know, like,
okay,
I thought we were bad. They sit at the airport, you know.
They've been what to look for sometimes.
Yes, and when I went there, like, I went to meet certain people personally, like people from my executive team and some others. You know, marechaussees on your airport in the Caribbean, that is a weird thing, you know? Yeah. There's some kind of vibes. And I was like, because when one of them said to me, you know, when she said it, I was like, what exactly do you mean though? She said, it reminds me of Martinique. I said, really?
Of where?
Martinique.
Martinique, oh yeah.
I was like, and then I started to think, because I'm thinking back to my experience in Martinique, I was like, yeah, if you're from a different part of the Caribbean, certain things you feel.
Right away, yeah.
I thought that was interesting, yeah.
And it never used to be like that.
It never used to. Well, I had to try to explain myself and say, well, my island was not always like this.
But you know, it's amazing. And I got to bring this up. You know, my good friend, the late Dr. Colonialism, he said it. He predicted it.
He did?
Many years ago, he predicted it. And it's come to pass. And his speech of 1990 on November 11th, which was a historic speech, which I have the transcripts from it, he made all those comments. He was a visionary.
Wow.
Today, it's all there.
You can see it because even because I did 2 presentations also, and both of them they were related to the theme, because the theme of the conference was reparations. And we did reparations in the form of resistance, resilience. We talk about reproduction and then rehabilitation. So you had these different themes. And in 2 of the panels that I was on, I could see what you're talking about in terms, because for me, I'm seeing certain trends, and I know if we don't make an effort to correct course, it's going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Just what you see happening now in St. Martin, the things that you're hearing, the things that you're watching in terms of the global geopolitics, etc. There's a prediction. I don't know how close we are to where Dr. Kladwati was, but what I'm seeing is a trend in the wrong direction in terms of our becoming more self-governing and self-reliant.
Right. Well, self-reliant. We've lost that. And the late Daniela Jeffrey spoke about that many times on this show also, in terms of how we've all gone backwards from very independent people to now relying on European powers.
Without any basis for it.
Yeah.
Because part of it is, and I must say this, and this is one of the things that came out at the conference, with a number of our participants making comments, even in their own presentations after being here at least one day, had to do with this notion that how could we as Caribbean people think that we can take care of ourselves, right? For them, that's like a strange idea.
But people feel we're too emotional.
Well, we're too emotional, right?
Too emotional, then you're going to have those kind of...
And our leadership keeps saying it, because we've had leadership, especially at present, but definitely over the years, that kept saying to people, you know, all the things that they can do. Like, you can't do this. You can't take care of yourself. You can't. So after a while, people start to believe that. And if you're coming from the rest of the Caribbean, where they've been independentless for the last 60 years, 50 years, they don't understand that way of thinking.
Well, again, I got to bring up the late Dr. Claude on this show.
Yeah.
Said, and December of 1980, but it was aired in 1981, that he wanted full political independence for St. Martin. The establishment didn't want it.
Right.
Okay? And they resisted, along with another political party today that it's there. So you had a leader who was calling for it. Now we have leaders who are afraid of it. So.
Yeah, and which is scary. The Honorable, His Excellency David Commission, who is the CARICOM, the Barbados ambassador to CARICOM and the advisor to Prime Minister Mia Mottley, he was the keynote speaker. Okay. And he said, in his keynote address, but also on the panel on decolonization on the Monday, he said something like he doesn't know what it's like to live in a colony, and he can't imagine what it's like for the people who live here. So imagine thinking that all your life you've known, nothing else but self-sufficiency. So to hear people saying that we can't do this after 400 or 500 years of our survival in this region is weird to a lot of Caribbean people, but not just the average Caribbean man on the street who is already self-sufficient. The scholars who study our condition, our situation, who write about it, because all of these people that were at this conference are scholars of Caribbean studies. There's over 400 something people that either do research, teach, or currently studying Caribbean studies. Okay. And what they know is very different than what they were hearing in some of the discussions on St. Martin.
Well, if you look back at St. Martin, both sides of this island, I would say, was independent until 1975, 1980. Mm-hmm. Then when France and Holland discovered, well, wait, this is a gem, the Caribbean.
Yes.
Everything changed. And now today, people are relying so much on those two European countries that it's we've gone backwards in a way.
Absolutely. And when you look at the timeline in our history, because this is something that we have done both as the Independence for St. Martin Foundation and as one as XM and other people, when we look at our historical timeline. So you look at early settlement in the 1620s, and then you look at the different constellation of governments over the years and occupation every single time on that timeline. When St. Martin was ignored, abandoned, non-administered, etc., the people did better. Yeah, and the people were better off.
There's a book on how St. Martin has left this island in the early 1900s to go to the Dominican Republic and those countries. And mostly women were left on the island. But we always came back home, contrary to different places where people went and never came back.
Right.
So it shows you the kind of people we are and were as independent people. Today, we're not there anymore, Dr. Arrindell. It's a whole
I tend to believe that we are still there in the sense of I always watch at the youth. I agree with you that current leadership does not demonstrate that. Definitely not. The current leadership has no confidence in the people and says it blatantly over and over, but it's also been said by past leaders. So let's just be honest with that, right? And so to me, each one of those, they aided and abetted a situation that we're in now. Yeah. What you're doing when you listen to the young people, the younger ones, those who are, whether they're on a radio program or we had a panel. We had 2 youth forums during this conference.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought there.
Yes.
We're going to come back to that part, all right?
Okay, sure.
In case you just joined us, you're watching or you're listening to, speaking of everything, my guest is Dr. Arrindell. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. We're right back after this word.
We are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Bankomatico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Bankomatico Plus, more of the best.
You watching or you're listening to Hot 99.9 FM radio. My guest is Dr. Arrindell, and she is here with us and speaking with us about Dr. Arrindell is the past president of Caribbean Studies, right?
Yes, association.
And
yes,
she is currently the president of One St. Martin.
Yes, sir.
And there's another foundation, Independence for St. Martin. That's our Junior League, right?
That's Junior League president, right?
You're still at Howard?
I'm still at Howard.
Yeah.
Now we're on summer break, you should call it.
Yeah.
you know. But I don't know how, when I watch what's going on in the U.S., I don't know about that break.
So you have to be there physically?
I have to be there. Well, you know, that's another conversation, because some in my department are saying absolutely not, right? Because all my classes were virtual. Now they've required that we at least no more than 20% of every department has to be, you know, you can't have more than 20% in terms of online or virtual delivery.
Okay.
So we are required to be in person. But what I did last semester, because of how I was hired as virtual at the end, and then this new policy, I did a hybrid situation. But come fall, I have to be back there in person.
All right. So
Yeah.
you don't want to go back?
I like the job, like the interaction with the students at Howard. I love it. I miss my family, to be honest with you. I miss when I say family, my immediate family, but also my environment. But at the same time, when you watch it, how they call him nowadays Taco. I call him Taco Jones. When you watch how Taco Jones is behaving, it changes the entire atmosphere, not just in Washington, D.C., but just in the country, just how people feel and how people are talking, right? How people are addressing each other. There's a kind of nasty atmosphere, but there's also hope. And that's why I was talking about the young
Everything's
people.
going to be okay.
Yeah, the young people. When you listen to the young ones, you know, they feel that they're invincible. And at Howard, what I like about Howard University is that's why I keep saying HBCUs make a difference in Black people's lives. You have young people who are set up to succeed. The ecosystem around them is that their failure is not an option. So when you sit down and you talk with them, they're very optimistic, they're committed. Some of them are overly enthusiastic, you know, but that's good, right? That says there's hope. And that says that the majority of the young people that I've talked to, that I interact with, feel good about doing the right thing.
So what's the student population there? 3,000?
They say there's over 40,000 or something like that. That's the official number. But where I'm at, I can't see, but I'm saying can't, because you have the different schools, right? Like I'm a distance away from the
more than one
law
campus?
school. Yes, you have the law campus, and then you have where I am in the main campus, and you have your different schools spread out throughout, you know, the Howard area. Yeah. But I love it. I love the range of Black excellence. I mean, there's a mixture of everybody, but predominantly it's a Black school. And then what you get is you get a range. You know, sometimes...
So there are no white students on the
You have white, you have Asian, you have Latin, you know, the so-called... And again, that's this ethnicity thing. But it's a Black school. It's a school where African descended people are the predominant, but also not necessarily in the faculty, which was surprising to me, that the faculty is just about mixed, right? About 50-50, predominantly Black and non-Black.
Isn't that odd in a way?
You know what it is? And this is why there's a big concerted effort at Howard to get more African Americans to get PhDs. Not too many of our people go and pursue PhDs. And if you're going to teach at a university, you need to have a PhD.
You go to most American universities. Most of the PhDs come from China, India, or parts of the Middle East. It depends.
When I look at, like, for example, Howard University Hospital is right there, and that's where I go and do all my medical stuff, because it's also part of your plan, right? Your medical plan, which I didn't have before I left. It's good to see the doctors understand you and know you, but you have Asian doctors. Primarily, I see Asians and Blacks, and then in between, I can't even think I've been treated by a European doctor. Whereas I'm in St. Maarten, was a predominantly Black community. When I go to the medical center, my experience is very different, very different. Nothing wrong with it, but it says something about education and the schooling, because at Howard University Hospital, it's the students at Howard University that are also part of your treatment. Yeah. They're being guided by their professors, but they are also there. I've met like people from, let's say, the African continent that are doctors in different areas at Howard University. And that's refreshing.
I smile because you was the first Minister of Education at St. Maarten, okay? And
in the new system.
Yes, and that's 10-10-10. And during your term, my daughter left St. Maarten to study medicine in the Netherlands.
Right.
And today she's a
a
medical doctor. So we don't have many of our own people, but we're getting there too.
Yeah, but the system is not designed like a Howard is to make sure it happens.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? Those who succeed, like your daughter and many others, they succeeded in spite of.
So at Howard, they're merely...
Howard, there's an ecosystem that is designed to
Support
attract and to support and to make sure that
Yeah,
happens.
because in the Netherlands, they're making sure you don't make it.
Yes.
It's like
And
really,
Howard University turns out the most black doctors and engineers than any school in the United States.
It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I must say so even things that I hadn't experienced in St. Maarten, for example, like students who like have special provisions, I remember here at the university how we would have to, when we find a case, let's say of an autistic person at the university level, how we would have to figure out and navigate how to deal with it because it's new to us. There are provisions in place at Howard, for this. When this happens, this is how you deal with this. When this happens, so every student has an opportunity, even those that I saw where budget cuts were made or where they couldn't pay their bills because, you have to pay your education. How the community come together, put on a GoFundMe to make sure that student graduates, to make sure that this happens. So it's a very strong ecosystem. And so I think failure, not really an option.
And looking at what you just said, and you compare St. Maarteners going to the Netherlands to study, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Even when they're bright, because there's so many obstacles.
Yeah.
So I can see how Howard is doing it differently.
Awesome. So that's what I like. And then the other part of it is I call it a village of over 40,000 young people. Because most of my contemporaries, my peers, they live like in Maryland or they live outside and they go home at the end of the day. I'm around these people 24/7, because I live right on campus.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So you like it? They're watching the show, so don't they?
I know the reason why I'm saying I like the job, but it's also a stable income. Because one of the main reason I left here is because I couldn't get stable income. So it is a stable income, but when I look at the carrying capacity of that income, because I still have to maintain, either I have to give up what I have in St. Maarten, or I have to figure out how one paycheck can cover two households. That's where my challenge is. So I'm thinking of other options right now.
But correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're the first St. Maartener to be at a major U.S. university teaching, right?
No, but I don't know. I can't speak for major, but I know like one of my colleagues in 1SXM, Cindy Peters, she's a professor at Clark Atlanta, which is another HBCU in Atlanta. She's from St. Maarten. She's here right now at the moment, but she teaches at Clark Atlanta. And I know Debbie Jack is also, but I don't know if it's a HBCU, but Deborah Jack, artist Debbie Jack, I know for sure that she teaches at an American. And there are a few other St. Maarteners out there.
So we're not doing bad?
We're not doing bad. Our talent is sought other places.
People say, well, look, that system worked for them.
But that's the problem there, right? Yeah, I like when people say that because when you think of it, the education system is supposed to be equity for all. It shouldn't be the one or two that get through. That tells you something right there, right? It should be the majority, because if it was doing what it was supposed to do, all our people would be in the pharmacies. Our pharmacists, which is a big thing that nobody is paying attention to.
Now, I think.
Nobody is paying attention to. All our people will be in the judiciary. And when I say the judiciary, I'm not just talking about one or two lawyers. I'm talking about our public prosecutor's office. I'm talking about our judges. If our system was doing what it was supposed to do, we wouldn't be having a problem with staffing the medical center, for example. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Even day laborers, as simple as that. We are importing our airport, we're still lucky at the harbor, but always in our key positions, we have to staff it with a European shadow, right? That means the system is not producing what it's supposed to.
It's amazing because you're an educator. You understand the system since you was the first Minister of Education.
And I've written about it.
So what's really wrong with it?
The system is wrong. It's not designed for us to succeed. The system is so this is my second book that I'm hoping to get published this year. That's what it's going to be. Now that Caribbean Studies is over, that's my next focus. It has to come out. And like I said, I've measured, I've looked at our system on the front side, system on the Dutch side, system in the Bahamas where I was teaching at the time. And I was like, okay, St. Maarten and Bahamas kind of have similar histories. What is it that the Bahamas did that we can learn from? So I talk about that in the book, and then I look at different system of education. Number one, the system is not designed for us to be empowered as a people. The system is designed to maintain both the French and the Dutch colonial structures where the Europeans remain the elite in terms of the administration. So not necessarily the physical representation, right? Because we have these things called islanders at the helm or whatever, but you in the States we say we put a black face on it, right? Yes. But it doesn't mean that because it has a black face that it's designed so that, you know, black people can be empowered and to be in charge. So I look at that in the book, and I say these are some fundamental changes that we must make if we want it to change.
Gotta go to a quick break. Dr. Arrindell, we're gonna be right back.
Yes.
Please still us right here on Speaking of Everything.
Yes,
we
sir.
are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Banco Matico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Banco Matico Plus. More of the best.
Dr. Rhoda Arrindell is my guest right here on Speaking of Everything on Hot 99.9 FM Radio, Facebook, and on YouTube. You know, you do so many things. You're author, you're educator, you're teacher at Harvard, you're former Minister of Education, you're now past president of Caribbean Studies Association. What else? You're the president of SXM.
One SXM.
What else you do?
I'm going to be a grandmother soon.
Well, congratulations.
That's the one that scares me. I'm scared. In a few.
Your life will change.
My life will change, and I'm already.
For the better, by the way.
I'm telling myself that. I'm telling myself that because I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter at the age of 28, how panicky I was. Yeah. Because, you know, it's supposed to be natural, right? They tell you all of this. And I was still scared. I was still scared. I remember telling Dr. Petty when we in the hospital, he said, you know, and I said, I'm not ready. He said, but last week I tell you to pack. I said, I'm not talking about ready like that. Because your whole life is going to change.
And speaking about Dr. Petty, he was a local gynecologist.
Love him.
And
love him today. Love him to this day. Yeah. We've not had a Dr. Petty since. Yeah. And my daughter, watching her go through this journey. But since my mom passed, I have recently realized that I'm now an elder.
And that time you had your mother to support you.
Yes, I had my mother. So now I am that person to my daughter. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's amazing, huh? I once told Lasana Seiko about the Lion King. I said, Lasana, if you watch the Lion King, it's universal. There's everything for everyone there. It even portrays black is bad, or the earth turns gray and dark. Yes. There's everything. You ever watch The Lion King?
Listen, one of my favorite. I don't watch movies over and over, and I don't like cartoons. But Lion King's one of those. You know, you had the DVDs. Yeah. We watch that over and over and over, and even the later version, watch it with my kids 2-3 times. I like it. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I think it's a cartoon that every child should see and be explaining to them what it's all about, because it shows you everything, how not to trust people, and and then how in the end too, how good always trumps evil. I think that's like the cardinal lesson, right? Good will always trump evil. So good versus evil, good
always wins.
Prevails.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes.
So when last have you been to Barbados?
2024 December.
Yeah, well, you've been there recently.
Yeah. Look, I love the Caribbean. Any opportunity I get to go, especially if they're paying for it, I go, right?
Yeah, but people say those Bajan people,
I love
they
Barbados.
think they're the biggest.
And I get it. Listen, when I was when I was at University of Miami, I remember the first year I did my University of Miami, we used to have a group of Caribbean people and mixed, right? And I remember we would always sit and say, there goes the Africans, or the Africans come in. There was a group of Africans on campus. I get to find out later that they were primarily Nigerians, right?
Oh, okay.
And then there were some Ethiopians, right? Who they travel in packs. But what I liked about the Africans, as we used to call them, when they walked on campus, they walked big. They walked royal. They used to wear their gear, their wear, and they used to look so regal. And I remember as a young student from St. Martin saying, "Wow, the Africans," you know. I feel that way about Bajans as Caribbean people. I've always liked Barbados, always. There's something about Barbados. Every time I go there, I feel like, oh. But then it's also very colonial, which reminds me to the Bahamas. Is this contradiction of the colonial structures? Yes. Yeah. But when you talk to the people, Barbadians and Cubans, my experience, they have a sense of belief in self that's, I think is something you don't find in the rest of the Caribbean to the same degree. I see Kittians have it too, but Barbadians, they really believe in themselves.
Hey, I believe myself. And I think I remember clashing with one of them at the airport in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
because they really think they're it.
They don't play.
Really, I admire them.
Yes.
But, they think that they're the greatest in the
all
Caribbean.
of the Caribbean, not all of the Caribbean. It's just like I find out with St. Martin people too. We tend to, those of us who were colonized under the Dutch and the French, tend to look down on the others from the other islands.
Look down on what? We don't have anything.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, right?
We used to think that we had everything.
Yeah.
And then we found out now we have
nothing. And when you compare yourself to what's going on next door,
exactly.
But it's also that mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah, Caribbean people have that.
That's the reason why I say, as an individual, I look at myself. I'm not better than no one. No one is better than me.
Exactly.
And if you care about your country and your people, too many people here on this island today only care about themselves.
Yes. But that's the mentality of the culture that we live in, especially when you think of the capitalist model. Because the capitalist ideology is centered on self. Yeah. If you work hard, you're going to take care of your family and you and yours, and I got to get mine. And nowadays, now with the social media, you hear this conversation about take care of yourself first. And, if you, so there's that mentality. Very little conversation anymore about the collective and how we're as strong as the weakest among us. How if we don't take care of our brother, am I my brother's keeper? We're not getting that anymore as a philosophy. But I think it will change because collaboration is always stronger than competition, always. And it only can sustain itself so long. Look at what's happening in the U.S. right now. The two big ones, the richest and the baddest, they're fighting each other because evil and greed can't sustain itself. It can't. You have to go back to where does your happiness come from? And it really can't come if your community is falling apart. So you could be doing good, but not your community, then you're nobody.
Well, I look at my island, St. Maarten, and it hurts. It hurts because the suffering and the pain that people are going through right now, they didn't go through that in the 60s and the 70s.
And who feels it knows it. Yeah. Because people take for granted that you're okay. Look at Oral, he got his own radio TV station, so he must be doing good. They don't know it. And a lot of them, I believe, and I've said this to friends, especially those who are making policies, they can't connect to the reality on the ground of the average person.
They should try sometime just stopping and speaking with people. The other day I stopped and picked up a lady, gave her a lift. And this is a lady that I've known most of my life. And she was telling me about the problem she's experiencing and that government will not assist her. And the reason why government won't assist her is because this particular corporation is very powerful. And what the rest is history in a way. And the frustration that this woman expressed to me. And she said, you know what, I feel that one day I'm going to go in there and mash up the place. You can't do that. You're going to get
But you can relate to that feeling, right?
Yes, and she says to me, my husband is literally dying. So there's a lot of pain.
There's a lot of
and
pain.
people don't understand that.
And then they come with these policies. And I remember saying to friends, like, you guys are too focused on the policies and the procedures, and you're not seeing the people. You know, the people should come first. And you know, one of our
good slogan. The people should come.
The people
first.
should always come first, right? You're telling me this is the law and this is the policy and this is the laws are supposed to serve the people, not the opposite way, right? The system is supposed to serve the people. So if you don't see the people first and figure out how to solve that problem, and it's always about money. They always tell you how expensive things are and why you can't do this, and as opposed to how can we think of a situation where we can help this person. And I think that's sad.
Well, Dr. Arrindell, it's always a pleasure having you here. The last time I had you here was 7 months ago. It's good to see you back again on the show.
It's good to be back.
And continue doing a great job. Anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, I want to add that part that I was saying earlier about the young people. I've seen in the last year at least 3 different areas where young people were present, and this is outside of my classes at Howard, right? So I have like every semester over 120 students that I'm teaching that semester. But I've witnessed St. Maarten young people talk about. We just had the session, like I said, during the conference at the university, and hear how these young people see their role in the future, and the fact that they believe that they can govern themselves. That's what makes me hopeful. And because of that, in spite of what's going on in the world, we remain positive.
I do feel that young people need to realize that we need educated leaders too. It's not like in the past where you just finish high school and that was it. We live in a very complex world. And that doesn't take away that you can't lead without a
college degree, right?
But it helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
And I think
it starts you off at a point where that's a conversation I'm having with my son. You know, I understand how this looks attractive, but trust me, that little paper, as we say, makes a difference in your life. It's a stepping stone.
So it's worth the sacrifice.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely.
And with Dr. Arrindell, thank you. Much success.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
And that's it for now here. And speaking of everything, I'll see you next time on Facebook, YouTube, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. Take care. Bye.
Oh, awesome.